that was a great overview about social media as a whole, as this big beast that it is. And so now I'm going to talk about a lot of what Nikhil said, but I'll break it down into more detail. But first of all, just out of curiosity, do you know if your agency has a social media presence? Can you just raise your hand if your agency has a social media presence? Awesome. Is anybody in charge of that presence? Okay, awesome. So this is, it'll be good for you to see what we're doing, but this is also good for everyone to see how social media is used and what thought process goes into it, because it's not just, my 12-year-old cousin has a Facebook account and he can post something, get 50 likes on it, and he had no thought process at all. But we run pages, so we have, it's a different beast. So it's not as simple as just posting about his smelly fart or something. So we have to, there's a lot more strategy to it. So the main thing, the first thing before you even create a social media account or anything is to have some sort of content strategy. And it's extremely important. There are many, many definitions out there about what a content strategy is, but this one's my favorite from Rebecca Leib at Marketing Land. She says that content strategy is creating a repeatable process to govern content marketing and make it accountable to measure goals. I really like this because at the first part she says it's creating a repeatable process. So social media needs to be systematic. You need to have a workflow. You're creating these processes. You need to know what content is being created, who's creating it, when is it published. You're running these tests. You're constantly doing these controlled experiments in order to make your goals accountable. So you have to establish goals. You have to have something that you're working towards. And then you need to be accountable to those goals. So something's always driving you. That's what a content strategy is, creating these processes to meet your goals. So is it really important, my 12-year-old cousin can do it, do we really need to go through all this work to create a strategy? Yeah, we do. It's kind of a big deal. So throughout this presentation, I'm going to post a couple of memes. And a meme is a popular picture that someone has grabbed and put on the internet and then pasted some words in front of it. So this is a popular meme from Anchorman. And it's true. Content strategy is very important. It's kind of a big deal. It's something that we need to take seriously. Because we're creating content. That's the whole point of a content strategy. And content is key. Content runs what we do. So we need to have in order to have good content, we have to have a good content strategy. However, it doesn't just happen overnight. Patience is a virtue. You have to be patient with the content strategy. You have to run these tests. I do experiments for 3 months. So I'll run a test for 3 months to see if something's working or not. And then if it's not working, then I'll change. But that's 3 months worth that I had to collect all this data. It's a lot of data analysis and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. So far, everything that I've said, and most of what Nikhil said, is relevant for the private sector as well. The private sector, they create content strategies, they implement them, they have these goals, but we're not the private sector. We're a little different, we're a little more unique. And so Chris Colgan from the U.S. Coastal Guard has this great quote explaining how we're different than the private sector. He says, "We need to learn to measure success differently than the private sector. Our audience isn't made up of customers, but of fellow Americans. And we're not trying to sell them anything. They bought us whether they like it or not. We're trying to give them a stake in the process." So for the private sector, their goal is to convert followers into customers, right? They want your money. So they are going to interact with you. They want your money. I was buying a ticket for a concert one time, and I was having some trouble, so I tweeted at Ticketmaster, and they immediately responded back and answered my question, and then I bought my ticket. So they converted me from a follower into a customer. They got my money. So as Chris is saying, we're not really selling anything. We're not selling tickets to an All American Rejects concert. We want to give them a stake in the process. We want to be transparent. That's why we're on social media. Transparency is a big buzzword these days in government. We want to let the taxpayers know where their tax money is going. Because as Chris says, they bought us whether they like it or not. So we're here, so let's show them what's going on. We can also, social media is a great way to inform our constituents. So to let them know what agencies we provide. For example, DDS is now putting a lot of their services online. So you can actually get you can change your address on your driver's license online. You don't even have to go to a DDS location to do that. Who knew that? Exactly. So not a lot of people know that. So if we can help spread the word, we can put that on social media. We can get this information out there. So if people will do more online services, then the line at DDS will decrease, and then people won't be mad yelling at us all the time, or yelling at DDS and me. So that's how we're a little bit different than the private and public sector. So I want to explain some of the, I call them my KNOWs, K-N-O-W-S, not no-nos, but KNOWs, to help you understand kind of some of the details of what goes into a social media strategy or a content strategy. So the first know is to know your goals. Nikhil has already hit on this a lot, and I've touched on it some too, but you need to know your goals. You need to have something that you're aspiring to. The goals is the foundation of your social media, the foundation of your content strategy. Without any goals, everything would crumble. So for us, it's kind of easy because someone has already established our goals for us. This guy right here. Governor Nathan Deal has established goals for the state of Georgia. So for every state agency, he has his governor's vision. And that is to have a lean and responsive state government that allows communities, individuals, and businesses to prosper, focusing on educated, mobile, growing, healthy, safe, responsible, and efficient government. So that's our foundation. That's what our goals should come from. So the governor has his vision. Then each agency, in turn, has their own goals that relate back to that vision. And then each department in that agency, everything relates back. It just gets a little more specific as it goes down. So then you get to social media. So for me, I do social media for Georgia Gov. Georgia Gov is a Georgia Gov interactive team. So my social media goals relate to the Georgia Gov interactive team, which relates to the portal team, which relates to Georgia Technology Authority, which relates to the governor's vision. So everything kind of trickles down to what I do. And so that's how I've developed these 4 goals. And so I have 4 goals for social media. The first one is to be informative, friendly, and concise. So that's my voice. Whenever I'm communicating with a constituent, I want to be informative, friendly, and concise. Second goal is to communicate and engage. So I want to have conversations. I want to interact with people. Third one is customer service. If somebody comes to me with a question, I want to be able to answer it. I want to provide good customer service. And then fourth is to support Georgia agencies. I'm constantly posting content for other state agencies. So for DDS, I will post, make sure you can get your driver's license online, don't have to actually go to a DDS location to change your address. We also have a blog on Georgia.gov, and 25% of our blog posts are from guest bloggers, so from people in other agencies who are writing these blog posts, because we want to help get the message out there. So that's our fourth one, support Georgia agencies. So all our goals, all 4 of these goals kind of relate back to the governor's vision as a whole. And you can see it reflected in our social media. So this is a screenshot of our Facebook page. And so you can see here, I shared a status for DFACS. So I'm supporting a Georgia agency. I am being informative, friendly, and concise. I'm giving information, being friendly about it. We have a 100% response rate for, Facebook calculates that by month. So for this month, we have a 100% response rate in 11 minutes, which isn't the best way. It takes me some time to research things sometimes if I don't know the answer. But this is showing that how we are responding. We're engaging with our constituents. We're being in customer service. So all 4 of these goals are reflected in our social media. So what I don't recommend doing is being like Alabama, which I should preface, I'm from Alabama. I was born and raised in Alabama, Roll Tide. So I'm not ragging on Alabama. I am ragging on Alabama, but not because they're a bad state. My heart and soul is with Alabama, but their social media sucks. This isn't a good implementation of social media in government. So what they've done here, it's basically an RSS feed. So anytime a press release is published, it is automatically posted on their Facebook. So there is no engagement whatsoever. I mean, you can see there's 0 likes, 0 comments. There's nothing, no engagement. I doubt anyone is even looking at this page. I doubt they even know this page exists at Alabama. But it does exist, and you can find it. You can type it into Facebook right now, alabama.gov, and you can see that it's not, it's just an RSS feed. It's just automated posts. So that's not a good implementation of government social media. You want to be more like us, where, not to brag or anything, but we're a little better than Alabama. So to engage and to give useful information, not to be an RSS feed. So the second no is once you have your goals, once your goals are established, then you want to know your audience. Nikhil touched on this a lot. So you need to know who you're talking to, know your users, know what they want to hear, and give it to them. But how do you know who your audience is? How do you know what to say and who you're talking to? Well, Facebook and Twitter specifically give really good analytics, really good insight onto who your followers are. So this is a screenshot from our Twitter analytics. And you can see, I know what the gender ratio is. I know what their interests are. I know some more demographics. I know their lifestyle. I even know a salary range. So that helps me tailor content that's useful for them. I know that maybe they might be more interested in, or there might be more confusion about paying child support than getting food stamps. So I can post more about child support. So you need to know your audience and know who you're talking to. So once you have your goals, then you have your audience. The next is to know your voice and tone, know how to talk to these people. So every time I bring up voice and tone, this is usually what I get the most questions about, because it's a little confusing about the difference between a voice and a tone. And there are a variety of definitions, but this is how I keep it straight in my head. So your voice is anytime you're communicating to your constituent. So that was one of our goals. My voice as Georgia Gov is to be informative, friendly, and concise. Whether that's on Facebook or on Twitter or on a website, or even if you have an agency email address so if you are representing your agency and talking to someone as a representative of your agency, that's your voice, that's your agency's voice. Your tone is what differs depending on what platform you're using. So, for example, on Twitter is very hard news. Twitter is get to the point, say what you're going to say. So on Twitter, our tone is to be very informative with a little bit of friendly. That's our tone on Twitter. However, on Facebook, it's the exact opposite. So on Facebook, our tone is very friendly with a little bit of informative. So on Facebook, we use more exclamation points. We use more pictures. We say y'all because we're in Georgia. So we're a little bit more friendly on Facebook. Not to say we're not friendly on Twitter. We're still friendly. Our tone is just a little more happy on Facebook. So it's the same voice on both platforms. The tone just varies. So you need to establish your tone. Your agency needs to have a voice and a tone. And so whether that's across multiple platforms like this or across multiple people. So it's kind of easy for me because I'm the main person who posts on our social media accounts. So it's easy for me to keep that consistent voice and tone. But if you have multiple people posting on your accounts or multiple people running different accounts, then they all need to be on the same page. They all need to have a consistent voice and tone, depending on the platform. So that's the third no. The next no is to know your comrades. It's good to have friends. Friends are very helpful. Whether that be other state agencies. So, for example, in Georgia, we were all kind of in Georgia, there's usually one person per agency that's running social media, and it's usually not their full-time job. So it's hard. We struggle a lot. It's a lot of, it can get very lonely, and figuring out all these problems on your own can be hard. So a couple years ago, we all kind of came together, and we were like, we should work this out together, because this problem I'm having right now, you had it 2 months ago, so I would love your help. So we created this group on Facebook called the Georgia All-Stars, Social Media All-Stars. So it's this place where we can all come together and collaborate. So, and it's very Georgia specific, because we're all Georgia employees, or state employees. I also look at other states. I like to see what other states are doing. I like to have comrades in other states. So but I don't look at everyone, right? Like Alabama is not going to teach me a lot. But Texas.gov, or Missouri.gov, Kansas.gov, Maryland.gov, those are all accounts that are very similar to mine, so I can see what they're doing, and if they're doing something that I think is cool, then I might try it on my account too. And I interact with other states. So here's a fun conversation that I had with Maryland.gov. It was Maryland Day, so I tweeted at them, and I said, know anyone from Maryland, be sure to wish them a happy Maryland Day. So Maryland responded back, and Maryland said, thanks, Georgia. When is your special day? And so I responded back, being informative and friendly. I said, February 12th. We came along about 99 years after y'all, there's the y'all, in 1733, the 13th of the 13 original colonies. And so they responded back, and they said, happy belated Georgia Day to your oh-so-young state. So this is just a fun example of how we can collaborate, how we can work together and show that we're all in this together. There's another fun example, I think it was last year, a magazine posted, or submitted this article about the best barbecue in America. I think it was TripAdvisory. It was something like TripAdvisory, posted an article about the best barbecue in America. Georgia was number 1, North Carolina was number 2, Texas was number 3. Texas was very angry. They were not happy that they were number 3 in barbecue. So they tweeted about it, and we tweeted about it, and then North Carolina tweeted about it. So all 3 of us are in this little battle on whoever has the best barbecue. And it was a fun exercise in getting engagement rates from across the country. We're all kind of coming together. I recently went to a conference for all all social media managers in local and state government. And the conference itself was good. There were good speakers, but my favorite part was at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, where I actually got to sit down and talk to my counterparts in other states. That's what made that conference so valuable, was creating this world of comrades. So being able to surround myself with friends, because it can get lonely. I know it's social media, but it can get lonely running it by yourself. So I fully believe in knowing your comrades. The next is to know your numbers. So what do I mean by numbers? How do you know your numbers? Well, again, that depends on what your goals are. So this is your evidence. This is your evidence for your goals, your proof. So you have your goals, and then you collect all this data. The data is your numbers. You have to analyze it and see if you're succeeding, if your goals are being reached or not. So for Georgia Gov, one of our goals is to have high engagement. We want to engage with our constituents. So once a month, I will compile our numbers for Facebook and Twitter to see the engagement rate. This is one from last year, but I really liked this graph because it helps delineate this need to know your numbers. I post once a day. Well, back then I was posting twice a day on Facebook, but I'm very systematic about it because I'm running these controlled experiments to know what works and what doesn't work. So every Monday, I post a Meet Your Representatives post, so to meet your state representatives. Every Tuesday, I post a Meet Your Senators post to meet your senators. So it goes on and on and on. So every Wednesday back then, we used to do a Workforce Wednesday. I partnered with the Governor's Office of Workforce Development, who is now part of Economic Development. But back then, they were the Governor's Office of Workforce Development. And I would work with them to post something about the workforce for our Workforce Wednesdays. I would also post a state fact every Thursday. I thought I'm a history nut, so I love weird facts. I know more about Georgia than I do about Alabama. But I think it's fun, so I posted a state fact. Well, no one else really thought it was fun. The engagement rate's super low. It didn't work out too well. But you can see that video was the least engagement. This is tricky. So this is how you need to, you can't just look at it at face value. You have to take other factors into consideration. So for the video, we had only posted one video that month, whereas everything else, we had posted multiple of them. So you get more numbers when you increase the probability when you have more posts. Whereas with the video, we only had one video. Also, at this time, Facebook didn't like videos. Videos ranked very low on their algorithm. Today, now, videos rank very high on the algorithm, especially if you upload it directly to Facebook, so if you don't use YouTube. So now, it's completely different. Our videos are one of our most engaged, our biggest engagement. So, looking at this, I can see that my three lowest statuses for engagement were the workforce development, video, and state fact. Video is kind of an outlier. We know that that's not a number that's completely accurate, or doesn't fully represent what we're trying to do. So I stopped doing state government and the governor's office of workforce development. I stopped doing those posts because they weren't working. So knowing my numbers helps me know what to post and what not to post. So I stopped posting those, which goes to our next no, which is to know how to change. Social media is constantly changing, constantly. So you have to be willing to change your strategy, to alter it, to keep making it better. You can't ever get satisfied because what worked last week probably won't work this week. It's that fast. Things are constantly changing. So another thing that you need to be aware of for changing is during short-term crises, or when something is happening, such as a snowstorm. You need to know how to change your content strategy. So I do other things on our team. I can't focus on social media 100% of the time. So I schedule out posts. I am not sitting at my computer every hour posting something. I create a schedule. I have an editorial calendar. And so if you look at Georgia.gov's Facebook and Twitter account right now, you can see that things are being posted, but I'm standing right here. So how is she doing that? Magic. But with the snowstorms, when the snowstorms happened in 2014, 1 week in January, 1 week in February, worst 2 weeks of my life. It was awful. And I wasn't even stuck on the highway. I was in my own apartment. It was awful. I had to change my content strategy because Georgia suddenly was in the spotlight for the nation. And so we were being bombarded by a lot of very angry people all over the country. So while this is happening, I don't need to be posting about how to get your driver's license changed to the DDS, because that's not relevant. Instead, I need to be answering these questions. I need to be posting about how to drive safely in winter weather, or to post where the power outages are in Georgia, or where shelter is, where Red Cross is. So I had to change my strategy just for the short term. I don't have to delete everything that I had scheduled. I can just move it up some, move it to the next week or the next month. So you have to know how to change. Also need to know how to change for the long term. So we have some boundaries that I'll touch on in a second, but we have some no-no topics, some things that we just don't touch on because they're too controversial or they're too bipartisan. And one of those topics used to be marijuana. We used to not even talk about it because it was such a controversial issue. There were so many points of view, and it was a very heated debate. But 2 years ago, marijuana and cannabis oil, and creating the low THC oil registry, it came to the forefront. It was on the public's mind. It's what they wanted to know. The legislators, I think at last session, there were 3 bills and 1 Senate resolution about this. So it was there. People wanted to know this information, and so that's my obligation. I need to tell people what's going on. I need to give them the facts. And so I had to change my strategy. So we wrote blog posts, we posted about it. So we had to change our strategies to include we took marijuana off of our no-no list. So we need to know how to change. So that's the bulk of the details of social media in state government in Georgia. Now I want to turn it into HR. So how is this relevant to HR? What does HR need to know about all of this? Because I just threw a lot of information at you, and if you're not running your social media accounts, why do you need to know? But it's important to understand the process and to understand what's going on. So one thing that I feel like is important for HR to be aware of is about archiving. So I archive everything. I make sure that all of our content on Facebook and Twitter is archived because there is this act called the Freedom of Information Act that says whenever government posts anything that it is a public document, it's a public record. So the Department of Interior has this in their social media policy. It's talking about FOIA, and it says the government source content posted via third-party social media websites or on public government web servers becomes part of the public domain upon posting. So with limited exceptions, such content is therefore not exempt from FOIA requests. So right now, FOIA it's a federal mandate. So all federal agencies who have social media accounts are archiving. However, there hasn't, to my knowledge, again, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't pretend to be one. But to my knowledge, there hasn't ever been a case that says in Georgia where someone has sent a FOIA request for social media. But that doesn't mean that there won't be one. So even though it's a federal mandate, I talked to a lawyer in Illinois a few months ago, and she specializes in communication in state governments. And she said FOIA can be applied to state agencies or on a state and local level. So even though it's a federal mandate, we still need to be compliant with it. So I archive everything. It's kind of easy on Facebook and Twitter because you can export your data, you can export your posts into an Excel worksheet. So that makes it easy. The only problem is that they don't export everything. They export whatever you post, they export a status and your tweets on Twitter, but on Facebook, when you reply back to a comment, so if you post a status on Facebook, someone comments on it and then you reply back, Facebook does not export your reply back. But you're posting on social media, right? So that's a public domain. So what I have to do is I take a screenshot of it and then I upload it into a Google Drive so that I do have it documented somewhere. Because Facebook won't be around forever, right? We don't know that Facebook will keep this information, so we have to archive it ourselves. Same goes with direct messages on Facebook and on Twitter. They don't export direct messages. So again, I have to open the direct message, take a screenshot, and put it into a Google Drive. Or save it to my computer and put it into a Google Drive. So it's not the best system, but it works for us right now because we don't have a huge volume of this. I'm able to do it manually. There are a bunch of tools out there that will do it for you, so you don't have to manually do it like I do. There's one called Archive Social. They're a great tool. They're kind of expensive, but they're a great tool that archives all this data. They also capture the metadata. So that's very important to the federal agencies, but we don't really need a lot of the metadata, so we're good doing our system right now. But if we start being bombarded by it, we might have to change. But right now, we're good. So that's the first thing that I think HR needs to be aware of is FOIA, and that we are creating public records. Next thing is to know where your boundaries are. So social media, it's constantly changing, and it's constantly evolving, and we're the government, so it doesn't change often. So we have to know where our boundaries are. We have to know when to stop or when to keep going. On a more specialized level, for certain posts, we have to know when to respond and when not to respond. So there are 3 points of view to this. The first point of view, if it's something that, before you do anything, you have to remember your goals. Always keeping your goals at the forefront. So if you can respond back and meet one of your goals or meet your goals, then I like to respond back. So I remember my voice is to be informative, friendly, and concise. So if I can respond back and be informative, friendly, and concise, then I'll respond. However, if I can't do that, then I don't necessarily respond. There are a lot of, if someone's trying to pick a fight with us, or someone's ranting, I can't give them any information. They don't want information. They just want to yell at somebody. They won't listen. So I'm not going to respond back. So there are 3 points of view to when to respond and when not to respond. The first point of view is to never respond ever. And that's what a lot of government agencies do, right? Because it's hard. It's hard to respond back. So never respond ever, as Alabama does. The other side of the equation is to always respond, always. That's what the private sector does. That's what Ticketmaster did, right? That's what Taco Bell does. That's what Kit Kat does. The private sector responds back always because they want your money. And then the third point of view is the one I just mentioned. We sometimes respond. If we can meet our goal, if we can be informative, friendly, and concise, then we'll respond back. Otherwise, I don't respond back. So I've established my boundaries. I know what to talk about and what not to talk about. We have that list of the no-nos that we don't talk about. And those things can evolve and change, like with the marijuana example, but at least we've established this. We've thought it out beforehand. So when a crisis or when something does happen, we have a plan. So I feel like HR needs to understand that, needs to understand the boundaries that social media is limited on for government. The next thing is no interns. And I need to explain this. I started out as an intern. I was an intern at GTA, but I wasn't solely doing our social media. There are a lot of things that require a lot of knowledge in order to be in charge of a social media account. You have to understand policies, right? You have to understand the legal issues. And interns are talking, social media managers are talking directly to the constituent. Do you want a freshman who just finished their first year in college talking directly to their constituent? Maybe, it depends, it varies on the situation. But interns are temporary. If they're there getting school credit, they're only there for 3 to 6 months. How can we do everything that we talked about in 3 to 6 months? Also, Facebook and Twitter pages are different than your personal pages. So just because you have a personal Facebook page doesn't mean you understand how to run a business page. A fan page is what they used to be called. So interns are great to be a part of the process. You can help teach them. They can help be a part of the process. But I personally believe they shouldn't be the ones running your social media accounts. In the private sector, there are teams running social media accounts. It's not just one person. There are typically 2 teams, a strategy team and an implementation team. So the strategy does a lot of what I just talked about. They develop the strategy. They look at the numbers. They're analyzing the data. So then they can kind of help the implementation team know what to write about. So then the implementation team are the content creators. So they take the data and the analysis from the strategy team, and then they create these posts. So maybe an intern can be part of the implementation team, or so that they're still part of the process, but there's someone there in a senior position that knows what's going on and can kind of check them and make sure that it's working. In the beginning, even if you hire a dedicated person to run a social media account, it's hard to just get in there and go. You have to do your research. You need to listen first. So maybe you could have your intern reading what you do and sort of getting a sense of how you talk and what your voice is. So without even publishing anything, but they can understand what's going on. So interns are great and they're useful. I just don't think that they should be the sole person running a social media account. Next thing is security. Security is huge. We are running government social media, so we're still the government. need to be secure. That means changing your password. I would recommend changing it at least once a month. It also means having your phone, if you have your social media accounts on your phone, having a locked screen on your phone, or a code to get into your phone. Speaking of phones, you need to be sure that you know who you are when you're posting. So on Twitter and on Facebook, but on Twitter, you can switch between who you are. So you can switch between the accounts. You just click a button and you can pick which account you want to be. So, but when you first open the Twitter app, it brings you to your news feed, to your feed, and it doesn't tell you who you are. So if you go and you write a tweet, and if I'm Bethany and I want to write a tweet about Harry Potter because I love Harry Potter, and I just go up there and I start writing my tweet about Harry Potter, I don't necessarily know that I'm in the Georgia Gov app, right, or the Georgia Gov account. So then I could have just tweeted about Harry Potter from Georgia Gov, which could be awesome. But I don't know if that fully relates to our goals. I guess there could be a reason to do it. I'm going to find a reason. But you need to be conscious of who you are. On Facebook, it's also very easy because Facebook's kind of dumb. Facebook's awesome, but it's kind of dumb. And so when you have to have a personal account in order to have a Facebook page. So you have to attach your personal account to your page's account. So that makes it tricky because when you're scrolling down your personal news feed and a Georgia Gov, if I run a Georgia Gov Facebook account, a Georgia Gov post comes up and I like it, well, I just liked it as Georgia Gov. I have to manually go in there and change it to be as Bethany. So you have to be aware of who you are constantly. For my phones, I help make that distinction because luckily I'm fortunate enough to have two phones. So I have a personal phone and then GTA provided a work phone. So I keep all my Georgia Gov stuff on my work phone and all my personal stuff on my personal phone. So I don't have to make that, I'm not even tempted to do that. They're separated. So security is huge. We're the government. We have targets on our backs, especially when something controversial happens. So when people start getting mad about the Confederate flag, or when there's a snowstorm, or when something happens with guns, people get mad all across the country, not just Georgians, but all across the country. And so we need to make sure that we're secure, that there's no way that we can get hacked and something even worse could happen. Security is huge. And last but not least, what you're all probably here for is recruitment. So how to use social media for recruitment. Social media is huge. This is how the majority of HR, public or private sector, uses social media. Social media is a great way to get your information out there. So if you have a job posting it on your website, your official website, that works, that's good, but not everyone goes to your official website. However, if you post it on Facebook or on Twitter, then it's there. You reach more people. You're able to attract more people. You can also, so that's one reason, you can post your job openings. Another reason is that you can tell your story. You're your own narrative. Social media allows us to interact directly with the constituents. We don't have the media there telling our story. Instead, we can tell our own story, right? We don't have to go through the mouths of the media when using social media. So telling our story, letting people know who we are, what we do. The U.S. Coastal Guard has a great YouTube channel where they have posted all these videos about being in the U.S. Coastal Guard. And so you can see what day-to-day life is. And so after they created these videos, they noticed that their applications for the U.S. Coastal Guard increased because people were seeing what they do and they liked it and they wanted to be a part of that. So not only can you post job openings and reach more people, but you can also share your narrative. LinkedIn is huge. You can have a business page on LinkedIn where you can, again, post job openings. I have had multiple friends. Well, LinkedIn is great because you can reach those specialized skills. In the government, we want specialized skills. We want the best of the best. And it's hard to get those because they're in high demand and low supply. So with LinkedIn, you can help find who those people are, those high specialized skills. and we can reach out to them, even if they're not looking for a job. The thing with posting posting a job application on your website, someone has to actively be looking for a job in order to apply for that. Whereas with LinkedIn, you can kind of be proactive about it. So you can reach out to people. If you see someone on LinkedIn that has a skill that you've been looking for months or whatever, you can reach out to them and let them know that this position is available. I've had multiple friends who had jobs, they had great jobs, and they weren't looking for another job, but someone reached out to them on LinkedIn and told them about another company, and they did some research on the company, so they went to the Facebook page, learned their stories, learned what the company was about, and then applied for the job and got it. So it's not like they were unhappy at their other job, and they weren't looking for another job, but someone reached out to them, someone was being proactive and reached out to them because they saw a need that they needed. And so LinkedIn is a great place for that. So on that note, that's all I got. So y'all are great. Y'all didn't ask us any questions. We have time for questions.
Don't worry, there'll be questions.
Go ahead. I was wondering, since you said you don't tweet or you don't update Facebook all the time.
No, I do.
Okay, but I guess my question is, do you have are you going through an app to schedule tweets out? Or
yeah, so I use, for Facebook, I use the internal Facebook. Pages on Facebook are I'm not exaggerating, they're a complete different tool than personal Facebook pages. You have more options. So on a Facebook page, for a business page, you can type out your posts, and instead of pressing publish, there's little arrows. You click on the arrow, and a drop-down menu comes. There's an option to schedule. You can click on that schedule. You can set the date and the time that post goes out. So that's what I use for Facebook. For Twitter also has the same functionality, but you have to go to tweetdeck.twitter.com. TweetDeck used to be their own company, but then Twitter acquired them. So it's a free tool that Twitter provides that you can schedule posts that way. You'll type, when you go to tweetdeck.twitter.com, type in your username and your password, and then it'll take you to this dashboard. And you can customize the dashboard how you want, and you can schedule posts that way. We at Georgia Gov, for Twitter, we use Hootsuite. Hootsuite is also a free, or it can be free, you can pay for it, but we use the free version. It's basically like TweetDeck. I just like the interface a little bit better on Hootsuite, so we use Hootsuite to schedule our tweets. Yes, ma'am.
When you were showing the metrics in terms of what was effective and what was not as effective, what is counted as an engagement? What is recognized?
Sorry, I should have talked about that. I can go back to that slide. I look at our engagement rate is a combination of, my mouse is gone, of comments, likes, and shares. So anytime someone has engaged with a status, so that's comments, likes, shares.
Okay.
On Twitter, there's favorites, retweets, and replies. So Twitter's actually awesome. And if you go to analytics.twitter.com, they have they'll calculate the rate for you. They'll take your engagement rate and your reach and average them together, so you can see both of them, both metrics. So there's two. You can see engagement rate and then reach rate. So how many people actually saw this post, and it averages them together. We typically just look at the engagement rate because we want to interact with our constituents. But this graph, this is something that I do manually with Facebook because I don't trust Facebook. Facebook lies a lot. So I do it all manually.
Don't tweet that.
So once a month, I tally up the number of comments, likes, and shares that we got for every post. And then I plot it out on a graph. Now, this was last year. Now I use pie charts so I can better see how things are being used. And I also, everything's constantly changing. I also mainly look at percentage rates now, or I look at the rate rather than the summation, because like with the video we learned, some things could have more, but that's because we posted it more. So I like to use percentages more so than summations. Yeah, good question. Yes, ma'am.
So I have a question. We're a bit risk averse from a social media perspective. I work for the state accounting office. My question is, do we have any social media accounts that are specifically serving agencies? So they would potentially, you talk about constituents, so that could be citizens or anything, but really our audience and our target is really our enterprise agencies. So do you guys find that you have pages or different areas that only include enterprise serving agencies?
Yeah, so DOAS does that. They have really good Facebook and Twitter presence. But so we mainly focus on Facebook and Twitter because that's where our audience was. Like Nikhil was saying, we went to them. That's where they were. So for you, maybe there's another tool where state agencies are using, that state agencies are using more. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but so just because everyone else in the world has a Facebook and Twitter account doesn't mean that that's the best for you.
Right.
DOAS has a Facebook and a Twitter account, and they're very small. Their social media accounts are very small, but that doesn't mean that they're irrelevant. They just have a smaller fan base because it's only Georgia employees. So we are a little unique too. We work closely with DOAS because our fan base is state employees also. So we post about open enrollment, and we'll post about state offices being closed. So it's a little unique, but you just have to know where your audience is, and that might take some research and some questionnaires or something. But do you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, just a little, kind of piggyback on that. I mean, essentially, Patty, is kind of like the thing is where, like Bethany was saying about where the people are. Mm-hmm. In SAO's case, it's really, people who have registered for a certain platform maybe. Mm-hmm. So it could be Facebook, it could be LinkedIn. There are several options to create a closed group because you don't want to be broadcasting what you want to communicate. But at the same time, you could create those privacy settings where people either can opt in, or it could be a mandate saying, hey, we created this, join in as an enterprise and you'll be informed about your next paycheck.
So what social media area would have those closed groups? And do you have a preference?
LinkedIn does,
LinkedIn?
Facebook does, both of them do. Preference, no. It really depends like where most of the employees are registered.
Okay, very good, thank you.
I mostly use Facebook for my closed group. That's just because I'm on Facebook more because that's my job. I'm always on Facebook.
Okay. Cool.
But
you want to be where people get notifications.
yeah.
Food for thought, you bet.
Yes.
I got two more questions. In terms of like when you were trying to get the word out about what you do in terms of Georgia.gov to your constituents, I guess everybody in the state or outside the state, did y'all do anything like pay-per-clicks? Was it like, how did y'all kind of really get the word out? Because I know you can engage people, but it's only so far that engagement goes. Then how do you reach outside of that?
We were allowed to do that, but we didn't. I mean, honestly, we just didn't have the budget back then. But we still haven't done that. This was purely just organic. We have the only marketing I would say we had so far, which also was taken away from us, was Georgia.gov on the number plates, license plates of all the cars. That's it. And the new ones don't even have that. So But what we did though was we started showing these icons that represent us, saying now we have a presence on social media. We started leveraging some other conversations where people were actually talking, and we started participating in that. And when we saw that people now identify us, another thing, from an organization perspective, is you need to get verified as a government organization. Verification is kind of like that blue check mark. Facebook does that, Twitter does that, so that kind of gives you a good credibility for like when you are part of the discussion. When you're saying it, yours is the word. right? So you want to do that as well. So once you're going to do that, your followers are going to always, add up.
I would think it's a hesitation for employees because they're like, okay, maybe my employer might be following me, or I don't want people to see what's going on my Facebook page, and so that's some of the hesitation I think when you're trying to actually.
Personal accounts?
Yeah, for personal, like you like it, and they think you're gonna follow you, and
Right.
and then you're gonna, just different.
I'm going to take my Georgia Gov director hat off and put my SCAD professor hat on. This is what I tell my students. Like, if you don't want your mom and dad to find out something about, like, do not post it anywhere, right? Because Googling someone has become a second nature for anybody, HR or non-HR. A lot of times, like when we look for people to join our teams, and when we get applications, we totally trust our HR to do all the background checks, but we Google them out. We want to see, not just from skill set perspective, but we also want to see from just like overall culture fit perspective. How well would they be? So if we see something that's questionable, definitely it's not something that we base our decision by, but that does count when it comes to an employee's overall presence. So yeah, if something's just totally out of the line, where it's just not, professional, I would say do a very good job of hiding it, or just don't post it.
You can also control your privacy settings for your personal account, so that way, so for example, running Georgia Gov's account, I can't become friends with people. So people can like us and I can like other pages, but I can't friend you as a person. So I can't see any of your stuff, depending on what your settings are. Also, for example, you can control who sees your shares. So if you share a Georgia Gov account and you have the highest set of privacy settings, I, as a Georgia Gov person who's running the Georgia Gov account, I can see that someone shared it, but I can't see who that person is. So there are some privacy settings there. And I'm customized it.
Interesting.
Questions?
I have one more question. So what is your recommendation for perhaps, because your chart at the beginning said, hey, this has really got to start at the top. You got to have your executive leadership on board to say, yes, I'm going to be okay with social media. So what recommendations do you have for this group? Because I know some agencies are more risk averse than others. What do you think, I would imagine you build a business case that says, look, this is experiences that other people have had with social media. Let's see if we can try it. What do you recommend?
It really depends per agency. Again, boils down to what the goals are. But you definitely, regardless of the agency being risk averse or otherwise, need the leadership to back you at the point when if something goes wrong, the leader's like, okay, we just shut it off. This, that's okay. We'll do our best to kind of come back out of this. I guess education. The reason a lot of people are risk averse is because they don't know entirely what they could be doing with it, or just take a very risk averse approach towards social media. When we started out, like Bethany said, there were some no-no topics that we were not touch this at all. We can only engage in probably a listening part for certain topics, and then we can have a very involved contribution for such topics. Maybe just have a long list of those no-no topics, and then have communications approved response just in case someone starts engaging in that. Because a lot of people on social media like to be noisemakers. It's not that they want to engage in a conversation, they just want their voice heard, or they just want to make noise. So I guess at that point you just need someone to identify what their intentions are, and then based on that, I guess you can choose to engage in that conversation. But at the same time, if you are able to convince your leadership, saying, look, we want to be doing this is why we're doing it, but this is definitely something we're not going to be doing, I guess they'll feel a lot better about it. And at the end of the day, maybe you can show them, look, this is where people are, and this is how we are. Right now we're sending off emails, our click rate or open rate is under 10%. People are not learning how to use the new Concur tool. Then, what do? Then, well, people are on Facebook. Maybe you start posting little videos about it. So next time, our calls are going to drop.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Well, thank you so much. Really good.